Hello and welcome. I'm Melodic Oak, and this is Dungeon Crawl Stone Soup. So, Dungeon Crawl Stone Soup is a classic roguelike. It's one of my favorite roguelikes ever, possibly one of my favorite games of all time. I know I said that about Endless Space as well, but I'm just going through the hit list here, So, this game is amazing. This game is absolutely 100% free. You can pick it up on the Dungeon Crawl Stone Soup official website. You can also play it online as well without having to download anything. It's kind of up to you. I prefer the offline client version, but both are completely legitimate ways to play. There are pros and cons to both. We're going to be using the offline client for today, and I'm going to sort of be using this as an example. I'll probably make some videos later about the online client, and kind of talk about that. But for now, this is going to be our chosen method of playing. So what is Dungeon Crawl Stone Soup? Well, like I said, it's a classic roguelike. I'll put up some pictures of Rogue, the actual game that, roguelike comes from, just to show you some examples. And yeah, that's right, it's an ASCII game. It is an actual ASCII title. Don't worry, we're going to be playing the version of Dungeon Crawl Stone Soup that has tiles, like graphical tiles, but you can download an ASCII version of the game if you want to be super true to roguelike culture and history. So, what is Rogue? Well, you probably know what roguelike means by now. It means permadeath, it means procedural generation, it means a number of things, but Dungeon Crawl Stone Soup has all those things, but it is very close to what the original Rogue was trying to accomplish. It's a game where you're going to be crawling through a massive dungeon, trying to get to the bottom, and then get back out with a certain item. In this case, it's called the Orb of Zot, and if you're able to do that, you win. Some people have played this game for hundreds or even thousands of hours and have never won a single game. That is not uncommon, and it also isn't the point of Dungeon Crawl. I mean, yes, it is the goal. The goal is to obviously try and win the game, but a lot of the fun in Dungeon Crawl is trying different things and failing, seeing why you failed, and then applying that to your next game and getting a little bit further, doing a little bit better, etc. And, like most games, it's just made to have fun. So that's what we're going to be doing today, is we're going to be playing Dungeon Crawl Stone Soup. Now, we're not just going to be playing it. This is also going to be a little bit of a tutorial, if you will. It's going to be half tutorial, half let's play, kind of like I've done before. Sorry about that, I was checking something. Yeah, so we're going to talk about that a little bit. So first things first, we need to make a character. Now, in order to play the game, you're just going to go ahead and click on Dungeon Crawl here, and then pick your race. Now, your race is probably the most important part of Dungeon Crawl. It decides what you're going to be better at than more than anything else in the game. Technically, any race can do just about anything with a few exceptions here and there. However, pretty much any race can do the majority of things in the game. So why are there different ones? Well, they all have really unique characteristics and abilities that are going to be very unique to them specifically, and they're also going to have these things called aptitudes, which make them better or worse at learning certain things. I know this looks really complicated. It's actually not. So you can see, here's the legend for what all these letters actually translate to. So, like, for example, humans are neutral on how quickly they can learn armor and dodging. A little bit better at stealth here. Neutral on shields. If you go down, invocations are a little bit better at that. Yada, yada, yada. This is how much overall experience they're going to gain. How much extra hit points they're going to gain, or less, as the case may be. Their magic resistance as they level up, and so on and so forth. You don't need to look at or worry about this right now. Sorry about that. Oh, fall time. Frog caught in my throat. That's what the coffee is for. So there's 3 different categories here, as you can see. There's simple, intermediate, and advanced. And what this is basically telling you is, by the way, none of these races are better or worse than each other, period. There's no such thing as a better or worse race in Dungeon Crawl at all. Some are going to be harder to play than others, and some are going to be easier to play than others on average. But that really doesn't mean a whole lot of anything in the long run. If it's your first time playing, I would not recommend playing anything from here, but you should be good to play anything from either of these lists here. Yeah, there's going to be some differences, and maybe it'll take a little bit of learning, but there's also a wonderful site that you can go to. It's crawl.chaosforge.org, or you can just type in Dungeon Crawl Stone Soup Wiki, and it'll be like the first result. And it has so much information. You can have that up like on a second monitor or something, or on a different tab or what have you, and just look up stuff whenever you need it. It's super handy, and you're probably going to want that open. I've literally played hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of this game, and I still commonly have that open. Because I forget things, or I need to double check things, or, I'm human, so. But we're going to go ahead and get this ball rolling here. There's a lot of different choices, and they're all good and bad at different things. But we're going to be playing a merfolk today. So what is a merfolk? Well, a merfolk is a humanoid. And I'm pretty sure that they technically, like in the lore, they have legs when they're on the ground. And that changes sort of like, Splash Style, whatever that movie was with wasn't it with Tom Hanks, where the woman when she gets wet, she turns into a mermaid. It works kind of like that. And there's big advantages if you go into water with a merfolk. They suddenly become much faster. They gain extra stealth and evasion. And any boots they're wearing meld into them and stop functioning, which is kind of a downside if you have some really nice boots, because they don't have feet when they're in the water. But other than that, they're pretty good at doing just about anything. If we click on list aptitudes, now that we've selected a race, you can see here what sort of our aptitudes are going to be like. We're not very good at learning how to wear armor, but we're very good at learning how to dodge, for example, and be stealthy. We have pretty average magic resistance, and then over here you can see what kinds of things we tend to be good at, and this is really going to play into sort of how we choose to play the character. Now, it's important to mention that yes, I have a +4 in polearms, as you can see here, PLA, and if you scroll up here, you can see PLA means polearms. Now, I am going to be playing with polearms today, but that does not mean that that's the only weapon choice that can work with a merfolk. The way that aptitudes work is, quite honestly, if it's a 0 or up, it is very, very okay to play a character that's going to be using whatever that is. Like, honestly, a long blade merfolk is still perfectly viable with a +1 aptitude. An Axis merfolk with -2 would be a lot harder to maintain, especially later in the game, but that doesn't mean it's impossible. I would say a lot of builds only really become truly impossible at like -3 and down. And even then, I've seen people do some pretty crazy stuff. So aptitudes should be taken with a grain of salt. They should be taken into consideration, but they're not the end-all be-all of what you are and are not able to do. So what's the class we're going to be playing? Well, this is our background, actually. It's not really a class. And the reason I say this is because whatever I pick here is going to have very little effect on us about 2 or 3 dungeon floors into the game. It's just not going to really matter anymore. This is just our background. This is our starting stuff. It's going to give us some starting skill levels, and it's going to give us some starting gear. But you can build your character completely differently from how you start, and in fact, very often, that's going to be the case, because you're going to be reliant on what you find along the way. So, again, it's one of those things where this will make more sense kind of as we start playing. Now, the background we're going to play is we're going to play a Skald. What is a Skald? Well, Skald, as you can see there, is a melee fighter that can boost themselves in battle with spells from the Charms school. Basically, the lore is that they sing songs and it makes them stronger during combat. They can be very powerful, but it's pretty... I've found in the past, it's not the first time I've played a Skald, that it can be easy to get in over your head because you become very confident with your combat abilities. And Skald does a lot for your offense. It does not do a lot for your defense. But yeah, if we look in aptitudes here, you can also use page up and page down to go a little bit faster here. Yeah, I should mention that another reason I like the offline client is that there's a ton of mouse support. Like I can use the scroll wheel here. If you were playing in the online version, you'd have to be using like the arrow keys or page up and page down, which is fine. I use a lot of keyboard functions on the offline client as well. just because they're faster, but having that extra mouse support there, so I can, be doing one thing on the keyboard, another thing with the mouse, it's very convenient. But yeah, so here's charms, and you can see that we have a +1 aptitude for charms, which means that we're going to take pretty well to being a skald with a polearm, which is really nice. So that's what we're going to go ahead and pick here. Now we have to go ahead and pick our weapon. Yeah, so a spear is going to be our polearm choice, but as you can see, you can pick a whole bunch of different things. And you might notice, by the way, in the last screen as well, whoops. So you might notice on this screen that some of these show up as white and some show up sort of as grayed out. The ones that are showing up as kind of a bright white are the recommended backgrounds for your chosen race. Again, like I said before, you can pick these, and as a matter of fact, there are a lot of sort of race and background combinations that work way better than the game recommends. This is sort of view this as like a beginner recommendation, but once you get more into the game and know it a little more inside and out, you're going to be able to play around with stuff and do things that are sort of, in your own playbook, so things that are sort of outside the norm, and have a ton of fun with it. So this is what we're going to be picking here. So now we're going to be selecting our name for today. Leave blank for a random name, or skip to cancel this character. We're going to go ahead and, just because we're Melodic Oak, we're going to go ahead and name our character Oak and press enter. And it's going to take a second here because it's going to be generating the dungeon, and bam. Alright, here we are in the dungeon. So what are we looking at? Well, fortunately, if you're playing the Tiles version of this, you're going to find that the game is actually pretty easy to sort of digest and comprehend. I hope that the text is big enough for everyone. I play on a pretty small UI scale just because it's easier for me. But, go ahead and leave a comment and let me know if it is a little too small. And in future dungeon crawl runs, I will make sure to make everything a little bit bigger. I'm guessing on full screen it'll show up fine, but yeah, just make sure to let me know. So here's me. This is me right here. Haha. I can right click on myself to get some more detailed information. You can right click on just about anything to get more information about it, right? And then you can go ahead and just hit escape to back out of that. This is like dungeon floor. You can even click on the floor, or you can click on a door, a wooden door, and you can immediately identify what things are, a stone wall, things like that. So this is a door. We can't see anything outside of this room, so we are going to be exiting this room eventually. Over here is your mini map. You can right click here and drag it around once we've explored more of the dungeon, which is nice. And then you can go ahead and press escape just to reset it. You can even click on the mini map. You see how when I'm hovering over my mini map, you get your cursor. You can actually move by clicking on here, which is, again, can be very useful once you've explored more of the dungeon. Down here is sort of our information. If you left click here, you'll get a whole history of everything so far in the game. And I mean a whole history. Once you're like 15 dungeon floors down, you'll be able to click on that and scroll up forever and read about a combat when you had with a goblin on the first floor. It's extremely useful for when you need to go back. You're like, wait, what just happened? And you can scroll up on that and see. It's very useful. Up here is sort of our basic character information. So here's our name and our race, our current hit points, our magic, as well as our armor class, our evasion, our shield rating, experience level, how far we have to get into our next level, how much noise we just made with our last action, our currently equipped and quivered stuff, our 3 base stats, strength, intelligence, and dexterity, what current dungeon floor or branch we're currently on, we'll talk about that in a little bit, and time. So time is both, this will show you, if I go ahead and move here, this will show you a couple of things. So this is how much time in total has passed, right? So if I keep on moving like that, you'll see that go up. The number in parentheses is how much time just passed during our last action. So moving one space is one arbitrary time unit. That's actually what they're called, I believe, is ATUs, arbitrary time units. And they're just the measurement of time in this game. Some really fast monsters, for example, will be able to act on like 0.5. So they'll get 2 actions for your every one. Some actions may take longer or shorter. It really depends and varies. Like if I hold down shift and press a button, if I hold down shift and then press Oh, no, excuse me, not shift. What am I doing? If I hold down control, sorry. If I hold down control and then press a button, I will attack in that direction automatically. Sorry, we'll talk about everything that just happened there in just a second with my derpiness there. So shift actually just, if you hold down shift and press an arrow key, it'll actually move until you hit something interesting, and those little footprints will show you kind of how you moved. Oh, I almost forgot. Those footprints aren't going to show up for you if you download and play the game. That's a config file change. I will look that up and put that in the description of the video, so that if you're curious and you want to do that, you can. Let me just go ahead and make a quick little note here. There we go, and I'll make sure to put that in the video description along with some other handy little tweaks. Anyway, so by the way, to move around, you can either click on a space, right, and your character will path there the best that they possibly can, if they can, or you can use the arrow keys or the numpad on your keyboard to move. I highly recommend using the numpad, because then you can move diagonally, and you can press 5 in the middle of the numpad to wait. So it's just kind of a handy way to do that. So why, when I moved there, did it use up 2 arbitrary time units? Well, that's because I picked up stuff. Those items that were on the ground that had a green outline that meant that they're marked for auto pickup. They're things that you are going to want to pick up. So my character, because we're not in a combat situation, just automatically picked them up as we moved over it. That's what we wanted. So we picked up some stuff. What did we pick up? Well, we can click here and we can read that. We can also just look in our inventory, which is down here. This is your inventory. These are all the slots in your inventory. There's no weight system to dungeon crawl. Delicious coffee. It's just a slot system. Once these slots are all filled up, you're not going to be able to pick up anything unless it stacks, right? Like these scrolls and these rations do. And the inventory management that comes from that is part of the game. And don't worry too much. Like if there's something you want later, you can just leave it on the floor, and then you can actually do like a search function to find it later and then just come back to it. That everything is permanent, including death. So you can always come back to an item. By the way, there are a lot of controls and little handy buttons. If you go ahead and do the hold down shift, press your question mark key twice, you'll go ahead and bring up this screen. Don't worry, again, it looks overwhelming. It's really not. A lot of this stuff you won't actually ever need to use, but it's just helpful to have this as like something you can look at if you need it, because there are some really handy little shortcuts and keys that you can use to sort of expedite your gameplay and simplify it a bit. So I would highly recommend giving this at some point, not when you first start playing, but just at some point, just go ahead and give this a little like overview, give this a little read, and see see what you see, and yeah, I think you'll definitely find it really helpful. So here I just press Control F, and that's the search for button, or the search for thing that I was talking about. So then you can search for stuff. So if I search for stair, I believe it should, oh no, it's not going to search for this. Okay, but for items it will work. So if I come over here and I hold down shift and click on the item, shift and clicking on an item will drop it. That's a scroll. So then if I do Control F scroll, bam, it's going to show me these are carried, the ones that I'm carrying, and this is one on a dungeon floor. So I can click on it and it will go ahead and highlight it, and then I can just click and move right back to it, and that'll work on any dungeon floor. It's very, very handy. So we're going to go ahead and get to actually playing here. So I'm going to go ahead and start explaining some stuff. This is your skill screen. This is the first thing you're going to want to open up when you first start a new run. These are the skills you're currently training. As you can see, there are a lot of them. Automatically, initially, you're going to be on auto. You don't want that. That means it'll automatically assign what skills are training. You're going to want to manually control this, even if you're just starting out. So you can either hit slash or just click down here to switch over to manual mode. And at first, I just recommend turning everything off like this, and then just looking and sort of deciding what you want to focus on at first. Now, this screen is going to show you the different skills and what their current level is, as well as the aptitude for that skill, which is how quickly it's going to be trainable. As you can see, our background started us off with a little bit of fighting and polearm skill, a little bit of armor and dodging even, and as well as some spell casting and charms for specifically charms spells. We can turn on any of these to start training them. Bam. See, if I just did this and exited this and started playing, any experience points I get are going to go 100% into fighting. If I turn on another one, oh, now it's splitting them up 50-50. I can click again to focus it, which means it'll get more, or turn it off entirely. And you can train as many skills as you want. Like I could do that, and as you can see, the different percentages will be going into them in that fashion. I recommend against training a bunch of skills at once right at the start of the game. Do some focus first so that you can make sure you can be survivable, and then you can kind of start to spread out your skill training. Now don't worry, you don't have to focus on something until it reaches a round number. For example, everything in this game is like a mathematical check done in the background, like a die roll, if you will. But these dice have have way more sides than would normally be possible. So 2.1 is still going to be better than a 2.0. The game is still taking that 0.1 into account, and it will affect how good I am at doing whatever that skill is. So you don't have to worry about getting stuff to round numbers. I mean, yeah, it looks nice. Look at that. It's nice, all nice and pretty. 2.0, nice. But it's not necessary. 2.1 is still better than 2.0 was. So you don't have to worry about that. Another thing we can do, by the way, if I click on this, it'll show you all the skills in the game. We can't train stuff that we don't have access to. Like we can train polearms because we have a polearm in our inventory. If we, for example, found a sword and started using that, we could still have polearms turned on and be training it, even though we're not using a polearm. You just need to have access to whatever the skill is, basically, or whatever allows that skill in order to be training it. Just something important to keep in mind. And also, if you click on this down here or press the exclamation point key on your keyboard, Shift 1, right? You can toggle through these 3 different modes that'll give you some information. So the first one shows you what percentage of experience you're putting into it. Pressing this will tell you the cost. That means however many total experience points it's going to take in order to get a 1-point gain in that skill. Now this is going to be affected by how high of a level that skill already is, what the aptitude is in that skill, and several other factors. So, for example, as you can see, charms is 3.2, spellcasting is 2.0. Why is it going to take less experience points for charms to go up than for spellcasting? Well, because the aptitude. There's a whole 2-point difference in their aptitudes. So this is all taken into account in the calculations. But you don't have to remember all this. You just remember the higher the level, the longer it's going to take to level it up. The better the aptitude, the quicker it will level. Bam. That simple. You can also set skill training targets. Sorry, I don't mean to overwhelm you with all this right at the beginning. This is all just genuinely helpful stuff to know so that you can actually get started faster when you start playing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on polearms and fighting. I'm going to focus fighting since polearms has a much better aptitude. It's going to level up much quicker. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to set some skill training targets for these. That means that once that hits a certain level, it'll turn it off in your skill training. This is very, very helpful so you don't have to continually go back to the screen and check. It's going to expedite your gameplay a lot. So we're going to train fighting until it's like 4.0. Polearms we're going to train until it's level 12. So why until it's level 12? Well, if I right click on my spear, you can see it has a base accuracy of +4, so it hits pretty often. Base damage of 6, that's pretty good. My strength will enhance the amount of damage that's going to deal as well. And then the base attack delay. That means it's going to take, at a base, 1.1 arbitrary time units every attack I make with this weapon. This can be reduced all the way down to a minimum of 0.5. That's really fast. It'll hit that attack delay at level 12. So and it'll become quicker and quicker the higher the level is for polearms. So what we can do is we can just go to our manage skills here, press the equal key, or click, or is there actually is there? Yeah, set skill target. Okay, you can't do that. And then we're just gonna go ahead and click on this, and we're gonna go ahead and set that to level 12. Now we're probably gonna manage our skills before that gets all the way up to level 12. That's really high of a level. It's gonna take a lot of experience to get there, but this is just gonna be a quick set and forget until a little bit later. So now we're finally gonna start playing the game. We have one spell here, by the way, Infusion. And this is our spell book. These are the spells that we can learn as we gain spell levels and as our character levels up. We will get to that. It is time to actually start playing. So in order to start exploring the dungeon, you can either manually move around, like this, like we can press the button to open the door, there's some gold on the ground, or you can press O on the keyboard or click here and it will auto explore. See that? It's automatically exploring and picking up stuff for me. It's fantastic. If you don't want to do that, you can manually click somewhere to move there. It's pretty great. You can also just use the numpad to automatically move around like this, or to not automatically, but to move around manually. And finally, you can use shift and then a directional key to move until you hit something or see something important. That can be a fast way to explore. Oh, and there's our first monster. This is a giant cockroach. We can right click on it to get some more information. And you can see its max HP. It's about how much HP it's going to have on average, about 5. It has 1 pip of armor class, 2 pips of evasion, no pips of magic resistance. It looks easy. So that's a really important thing to look at. It looks easy. This means that this monster is not going to be too big of a challenge for us to take it out. What is even more important, in my opinion, you look at is here. It can bite for up to 2 damage. That means that its bites are going to do up to 2 damage to me. Now I have 16 hit points, so that's not at all worrisome to me. Like that's nothing. So this guy is really not a big threat. Now these little Z's here tell me that this giant cockroach is asleep currently. If you look at the bottom down here when I'm hovering over it, you'll see it says it appears to be resting. So that means that we can sneak up on it, hopefully, and kill it. So every time we move, the game... Oh, see, it woke up. Okay. But what I was going to say is that every time we move, the game makes an internal check based on your stealth skill. We have 0 of it, which is probably why. Although I think we are innately a little bit stealthy. Yeah, just a little bit, because we're a mer person. We'll talk about that screen in a little while. You just right-click your character to get to the same screen. It's just like a character. It's sort of a summary of your current character statistics and everything. But yeah, we're a little bit stealthier, but that's okay. So this cockroach is going to move, now that it's awake and it's seen us. Now that it's awake, it doesn't have the little Z's. If it was awake but it hadn't seen us, it would have a little question mark, and it would just wander sort of aimlessly. But because it's seen us, it is going to come and attack us unless we either A, we make it lose sight of us, and it doesn't hear us, or we kill it. And in this case, we're going to kill it. There's really not a lot of reason to not do so. Now, this cockroach is fast, which means it's going to move nearly 1.5 times quicker than I do. So what we can do is we can move back like this, see, and it's already closed the gap a little bit closer to us. This is what we wanted it to do. Why? Because we have a spear. It's a polearm, which means it has reach, which means that we can attack it if there's a space between us and the enemy. Basically gives us a free hit. It's pretty great. And what we can do to quickly do that is you can just press V for evoke, and that'll automatically evoke your spear. And you're going to click on it. We hit it but did no damage. Now that it's right next to us, what we can do is we can just press the directional key towards it, and it'll attack it automatically. You can also hold down Control, like I was saying, to force an attack. And you can also just click on the enemy to attack it. Those are all valid ways of doing the same thing. Just do whatever is most comfortable for you. And finally, last but not least, you can actually just press tab and that'll automatically move towards and attack the closest enemy. I don't recommend doing that, actually, as a beginner. Think about your moves a little bit more, and then once you've gotten more used to the game, then you can go ahead and start doing that. So, it's dead now, but it's left a corpse. That's interesting. A corpse. You can butcher it to produce chunks of meat. We're going to do that, and I'll explain why. If we move over it, you can see here, we can either shift and left click it to chop it up, or we can just press C. Either way, it'll chop it up and put raw chunks of flesh into our inventory. It won't stay fresh for very long, but we can eat it to sort of fill up our hunger. Now, we're not hungry right now, so we can't eat this. It'll probably rot before we actually even get hungry. But you're just, in general, you're going to want to chop up everybody that you can and just keep chunks of meat on you at all times, because rations will last forever and meat won't, and the food clock is a pretty big part of the game. We're not going to talk about that right now, but just know that it's going to be pretty important later on as the game goes on. Oh, there is a hobgoblin. It is asleep. So what we're going to do is we're going to... Oh, it's woken up. That's okay. All right, let's move there. So now we can go ahead and attack it. Oh, see, it hit us. Look at that. It hit us for 4 damage. Let's take a look at it. It can hit for up to 5 damage. That's a lot heavier than that cockroach, isn't it? Statistically, it's pretty much the same as the cockroach, except it's not fast, and it hits for more damage. Now, a general rule of thumb in Dungeon Crawl, in my personal opinion, is never fight an enemy that can one-shot you, and be really cautious and confident in the situation and have a way out if you're going to fight an enemy that can two-shot you. And even if the enemy can only like 3 or 4 shot you, still use caution. Always use caution in Dungeon Crawl. A YouTuber I really like, Quill18, who plays a lot of Dungeon Crawl on his channel. Check him out. He's awesome. The way he put it, I really liked, which is that in Dungeon Crawl, you're going to constantly be putting yourself in situations where you could die. But the more of these situations you put yourself in, even if there's only a 1% chance that you could die, then after 100 of those situations where the chances of you dying are so incredibly slim, you're going to die on average. So more often than not, you want to put yourself into situations where you know you aren't going to die. Now, in this situation, I suspect we're going to be fine. Oh, I say that. Yeah, okay, he's dead. But it's you do want to use caution. Like, it's a big part of the game. Closer to the beginning of the game like this, like the first floor, you don't have to be as cautious because you're so close to the beginning of the game, you can just start a new one. It depends. Now, I don't have that same sort of pleasure here in that because I'm making this into a video, I need to try to not make this super short. All right, so we're going to move back into this hallway here, and we're going to go ahead and rest and heal. You see a button here, it says rest and heal. We can also press 5 on our numpad to wait, but that's just going to wait one turn at a time. So if we click this, see, it'll just wait until we're fully healed. So 154 arbitrary time units later, and we are healthy again. So that's awesome. So now we can go ahead and hit O and start exploring again. All right, looks like we found a frilled lizard. It can bite for up to 3 damage, has a ton of evasion, but no armor class. So yeah, we can definitely take him on. So we can go ahead and get, oh, and see, there's the polearm paying off. We went ahead and stabbed it before it could even get up close enough to do any damage to us, which is wonderful. So you may notice that I'm amassing a bit of a collection of potions and scrolls here. None of them are identified. None of them are identified, and every run you do, even if you find, for example, I have a gray potion and a green potion, right? One run, a green potion could be a potion of healing. The next run, a green potion could be a potion of mutation. It's going to be totally random each playthrough. So you are going to have to identify them as you play. And there are different ways to do that. We're going to wait to ID any of these. I highly recommend not drinking any potions unless you've identified them, unless you're in an absolutely 100% panic mode situation and you have no other choice. Otherwise, you're absolutely going to want to have to ID potions before you drink them. Scrolls, it's less important. You can blind read scrolls. In fact, you're basically going to have to find the scroll of identification so you can start doing that. We're going to wait to do that until we're in a better situation to do that. I'll kind of explain that once we get there. For now, we're going to continue exploring. Oh, that's a bat. So bats are just wonderful. Bats fly around and are super annoying. Oh, good thing we killed it. They're not super dangerous, but because they move around so much, you generally want to just like stand still and fight them or move away from them and fight them. If you move towards them, then what will happen, because they're very fast, is they'll hit you and move away. Fortunately, we have a polearm, which makes fighting bats way less annoying. But just keep that in mind with bats. They're not very dangerous, but they can be really annoying. And because sometimes they can take so long to kill, other monsters will wander by or hear the noise you're making. See here, you can see how much noise your last action just caused. And that will attract monsters depending on how close they are to you. So that's something you're going to want to keep in mind for sure. So we haven't actually used our spell yet. I should talk about that. So our spell we have is called Infusion. If we right click it, we can read about it a little bit. It infuses our melee attacks with magic, drawing from our reserves of magical energy to deal additional damage whenever an enemy is hit. So when this is cast, it's going to draw from our magic, our MP pool, basically, to do extra damage with our attacks until it's drained, of course, at which point it won't be able to do it anymore. You can also see all the information about the spell here. It's Charms, level 1, has a 10% chance of failing every time we cast it. That's not good. We're going to want to make that better for sure. It has a power rating of 1, no range because it's just cast on us. It costs us some hunger. Spells will do that. You can train up your spell casting skill to reduce the amount of hunger that casting spells costs you, but earlier on in the game it's less of an issue. Later on it will become a major issue because there are certain branches of the dungeon you're going to go into where there are not butcherable bodies, so the food clock becomes a big part of the game. Also, spells usually cause noise. This one is almost silent, so it's really a non-issue. Now, we don't need to use this, but I'm going to go ahead and use it just to show you how it works. So in order to cast a spell, you can either click on it here, or you can press Z, and then you can either list your spells or press the button for the spell. In this case, A, because it's our first spell. It goes A, B, C, D, E, etc. And now we're infused. Now, it's successfully cast. As you can see, you begin infusing your attacks with magical energy, and you can see infuse here, which means we are properly infused. So we can now attack the bat. Boom, one hit, it is immediately dead. Isn't that awesome? Go ahead and butcher the body there. Now, 10% is a terrible failure rate. We're going to want to get that down to like 1, 2, or 3% before we start casting it on the regs, because if it casts incorrectly, it could contaminate us, which will, it's not really that bad on its own. I believe all it really does is increases your failure chance with all your spells until you become uncontaminated, which just takes time. It doesn't take too terribly long, but it can be pretty bad in the middle of combat. Also, using up an entire arbitrary time unit, trying to cast something and it not working, is really bad. You can improve that spellcasting chance by training up spellcasting or charms. Charms is going to have a much greater effect, you know, because it's focused on that singular school of magic. Spellcasting will have an overall effect. It'll also increase your overall magic points and reduce spell hunger and stuff like that. But as you can see, it's going to train a lot more slowly. I should mention that -1 aptitude for spellcasting is actually the average across all species. So it's not bad or anything. It's just normal. But it's also, because it's way less focused, it takes way longer to train, because it affects all spells. Once our fighting hits level 4, kind of like where we set the goal for, in fact, even before then, as a matter of fact, we're going to change this to 3. Once our fighting hits level 3, we're going to go ahead and swap over to charms and train that a little bit so that we have a better success rate at casting this. We're also getting closer to leveling up, and once we do, we're going to be able to learn some new spells. So that's going to be fun and exciting. Okay, so we got a couple of monsters here. Now, even though altogether they're pretty weak, remember what I said about maximizing your chances of survival. You're going to come across a lot of situations like this, and there's, like, again, in this situation, a bat and a cockroach, my chances of dying are like maybe 2 or 3%. Okay, but with that math, if I get into, 30 some odd fights, I'm going to die on average. So we want to improve our chances. So we're going to move back. It looks like they've both seen us. So what we're going to do is we're going to move down this way. Like, the bat has seen us. But the bat's not going to be hitting very hard. So we're going to move down to here. All right, they're going to start hitting us now. What I was trying to do is I was trying to make it into a hallway so only one can reach us at a time. But the situation we're in now, it's actually going to be better for us to start hitting, because all that distance that we moved to get down there is going to give them free hits on us, which is not great. So we're going to go ahead and kill them. We just reached level 2, which is excellent. There we go. We killed both of them. Awesome. So again, in that situation, my chances were pretty good. And, constantly, every time you take an action and just seeing what's happening around you and sort of staying on top of it is going to be your best weapon. Your brain is your best weapon here. You're going to want to, you're going to have to take risks. Ooh, look at this room. But actually, we're in a pretty good position. I'll explain that in a second. But you're going to have to take risks, but you're only going to want to take calculated ones. And even then, you want to minimize the number of risks you're taking throughout the whole game. But we're doing pretty good so far. All right, so we leveled up, by the way. We're experience level 2, which means we gained some spell levels. We're going to be doing that, but first, we're going to go ahead and do this little fight that's going on here. So we have a goblin. Oh, that's actually a good chance for me to talk about that as well. We have a frilled lizard, and we have a ball python. Ball pythons are actually super easy by themselves and super dangerous around other monsters, so because they can constrict you. So we're going to want to take them all on as best we can here. Fortunately, we're in a hallway. See, a one-wide hallway. These are just a godsend. If I stay here and fight them, that's not good, because one monster can be here, one monster can be here, and I can be hit by both of those monsters. If I move back one, there's only room for one monster, which means I'm going to be able to fight them on my terms, one at a time. You're going to want to do this as often as possible when you fight stuff. So we're going to go ahead and wait for them to get a bit closer. We're going to go ahead and cast Infusion. Bam, it worked. So we're going to add a slight power advantage now as we're fighting these monsters. Now, a couple of things I want to mention. So you're going to see, first of all, wait, there's another python here? Is there 2 pythons? No, it's in the Fog of War. It's just remembering that this is the last place we saw one, so it's just reminding us of that. This is the same python that moved up from there. Once we see this space again, it will tell us that there's no ball python there. The next thing is this goblin. If you look down here, it says it can hit for up to 4 damage plus its cursed -1 club. What does that mean? Well, it means that the goblin's base damage is 4, right? Up to 4 damage. Plus, it's going to make a die roll. Basically, I think it's basically going to roll a d4, essentially, at this point. And it's going to do up to 4 damage, plus whatever damage that a club adds. So this is a great opportunity for you to use the wiki if you want to. It's really not necessary. You're going to be able to just sort of average out weapon damage once you've played enough. Like, you'll be like, oh, this weapon does 5 damage or whatever. And in the case of the club, that is true. It deals 5 damage. So on average, this goblin's going to be able to hit for up to 9 damage. That's quite a bit. We have 23 health though, so it can't 2-shot us. It can 3-shot us if it gets lucky. So obviously we're going to want to use caution, but it is very much a force that we can fight. Now, remember, we have a polearm. The ball python can hit us for some damage, yes, but not a whole lot. The frilled lizard and the goblin can hit for way more. So why don't we take them out first, since we can reach. Bam. Well, unfortunately, that hit the ball python. Oh, the ball python is in the way you hit the ball python. Oh, that's interesting. I don't think you can do that with enemies. I'm sorry, I'm mistaken. I don't play polearms for very often. I'm more of a sword and axe kind of a guy. Well, actually, I most commonly play spellcasters, but that's really interesting. I guess, oh, you know what? I'm misremembering. You can hit through allies. You cannot hit through enemies. So in this game, you are going to be able to get allies like through summon spells and such, depending on what kind of a character you're playing. And you are able to hit through them. That's a great advantage of polearms. I guess I was just mistaken or misthinking. You can't actually do that through enemies. Oh well. So we're going to go ahead and just start hitting the frilled lizard here. Take it out. We'll start attacking the goblin. Well, we're going to do so cautiously. Okay, cool. We did manage to kill it. So I went ahead and hit C to butcher. It's like, do you want to butcher the goblin corpse? We can just press A for all. I'll butcher everything there. So let's talk about cursed items. This is a cursed -1 club. We can right click on it to look at it. So a cursed item is something you do not want to equip, because a cursed item, once you equip it, you cannot unequip it until you remove the curse, which can be done with scrolls of remove curse. This is also why you don't want to blind wear items until you've identified them in most cases. If you have a scroll of, for example, a scroll of identify will tell you if an item is cursed. But if you don't have a scroll of identify, but you do have a scroll of remove curse, you can essentially look at the scroll of remove curse as being a scroll of identify, blind wear the item, and if it is cursed, go ahead and use that to remove the curse and then remove the item. Do not do this with amulets, whatever you do. And honestly, I wouldn't do it with weapons either. There are some weapons and amulets that can have negative effects that can really screw you over if you have to take them off. So I would highly recommend against doing that. So we're really close to our goal there, which is great. Oh, right, we're going to learn a new spell. So if you click on that little spell book here, it'll go ahead and bring up your list of spells. You can also go ahead and, I guess, hit capital M. Yeah. And so you can read about these. These are the spells that I am able to learn. This is my spell book, essentially. These are spells that I don't know, but I know how to learn them. You can acquire new spells in your spell book by picking up random spell books in the dungeon. They're quite rare, but they'll usually contain 4 or 5 spells, and then you can go ahead and learn them. Oh, I believe it is starting to hail outside. Sorry. I've been having hailstorms off and on all day. So exciting. Hopefully I don't lose power. So sorry. Train of thought. So these are your spells that you can learn. It's going to tell you how many spell levels you're going to have to spend to learn them. See, 2 and 2 in this case. As well as, and I believe the level also tells you what your minimum experience level is going to have to be in order to learn it. We're level 2, so we can learn either of these. So we can read about them first. If we go ahead and hit exclamation point, we'll switch this over. So there's actually these different modes: memorize, describe, hide, and show. So if there are spells that are in your spell book that you're never going to want to learn, you can hide them just to kind of clean up this list, because it can get quite long later on. But right now, we're going over to describe, and we're going to learn about these 2 spells. The Song of Slaying, one of the most important spells for a Skald, in my opinion. So basically what this is when you activate it, you start a song of slaying, and the more enemies you kill while this is active, the more your combat related buffs are going to get. It enhances their melee and ranged skills. So this is actually quite strong. However, as you can see, the major downside is it's loud because you're singing. So if you're playing a stealthy character, probably not going to be a good choice. And then there's the Shroud of Galubria. So this basically gives me sort of an invisible shield around me that bends space and time, and it deflects some blows. Ranged attacks are not diverted in this way, only melee attacks. And this is an interesting spell because, as you can see, it's part of two schools, Charms and Translocation. So training either or both of these schools is gonna feed into this skill. So once I learn this skill, I'm probably gonna want to pick up at least like 1 or 2 levels of Translocation to improve this from a 28% chance failure rate, which is horrifyingly bad. We're gonna want to train up both of these, but we're gonna go ahead and learn them. We're gonna memorize the Song of Slaying. It's gonna ask you to confirm. Just go ahead and hit Y. And then we're going to go ahead and learn Shroud of Galubria. We're going to hit Y. As you can see, oh, sorry, keep on scrolling down there. As you can see here, we are, actually it doesn't show it here. It only shows it here because it's blue text. We have 0 spell levels left. That's totally fine. We'll gain more as we level up. Having these spells is better than not having them. So we really need to train our charms. All 3 of our current spells are use the Charms school. So fighting is 0.1 away from leveling up. So we're just going to go ahead, it'll automatically turn off. If we look at targets, see? So we're going to go ahead and turn on Charms. As a matter of fact, we're going to focus it. And then once fighting is done, it'll automatically turn off, and we will continue to train Charms. So let's go ahead and continue exploring this dungeon floor. Oh, there is a sleeping hobgoblin. Now it is awake. As you can see, it is carrying a weapon. It's a club. So it can deal a decent amount of damage, but I'm pretty confident. Yeah, we're good. By the way, if you're standing on a space with items, you can either click on the item down here to pick it up, or you can just press G on your keyboard. Now automatically pick up items on the ground there that you can pick up. There are multiple items that'll ask you which ones you want to pick up. Okay, so it looks like we have multiple goblins here. One with a club and one with a dagger. So first of all, remember my advice. We want to move into a spot where only one of them can attack us at a time. And then we're going to go ahead and infuse our attacks and start fighting these goblins. So this one down here is actually still asleep. Oh, it's awake now. That is fine. Now it's dead. So now we're going to go ahead and kill the bat. Excellent. All right, so that all went extremely well. So as you can see, I'm actually clicking to move around like interchangeably with my numpad and my mouse. That's what I'm talking about with the offline client. It's just super convenient to be able to use either just as you need it. Like generally speaking, if I'm moving a long distance, I use my mouse. And for sort of minute adjustments, I use my my numpad. Or like during combat, for example. So as you can see, we did lose some mana during that fight because we infused. If you want to restore your health and magic before you get into the next fight, you can always rest and heal. Later on in the game, you're not going to want to spam that every single time you're missing a little bit of something, because your food clock becomes more and more important. At this point in the game, we don't have to worry about it. So generally, in between fights, try to rest up and be like fully kitted out with your health and magic before you get into the next battle. Okay, and look at that. We have finished this floor. If I hit O, it says done exploring. Bam. So we are done with this floor. Now, there could have been monsters that we missed because I could have been awake and wandering around. However, for the first floor, I highly doubt that is the case. So now, the next step is going to be going down a floor. So to dungeon level 2. I know it's exciting. I'm excited. I'm already having a ton of fun, actually, just talking about this. I freaking love this game. So if you look on the map, you see these bright magenta sort of squares. We're actually on one as well. And these are the floors down. The cyan ones are floors up. However, because we're on dungeon floor level 1, going up this stairway would actually quit the game. Like, we'd lose. You'd survive, but what's the fun in that? So we want to pop our head down these staircases and see what's down there. In order to do that, we can either just click on the space we're on, or we can go ahead and press the greater than symbol, so shift and then your period key, and that will take you down the stairs. Bam. You can't see a whole lot, so we'll go ahead and take a peek. Okay. Then we'll go ahead and go up. And we're going to go ahead and poke our head down all these stairways. Why am I doing this? Well, look at that. We can see where in relation this stairway is to this one, because they're not going to line up perfectly to the floor above. This is a windy, weird, mind-screwy dungeon. So that's not how it's going to work. So what we're going to want to do, and by the way, you use the lesser than key to go up, down and up there. You can also click on your map here, and that'll take us over to the staircase. We want to pop our heads down and just see, oh, those two staircases are very close. And this also allows us to see where we're going to want to, like, what our escape routes are while we're fighting things. Because you always in Dungeon Crawl want a way out from any fight or situation. It's just incredibly important. So always know where you can go to escape in any situation. Oh, there's a kobold. Hello. It's got a whip. I think we can probably take you on. Boom. And boom. It's going to throw some rocks at us, but we went ahead and killed it. Now, it didn't leave a corpse, though it didn't really matter. Kobolds actually leave poisonous corpses. Some corpses are going to be like, oh, I'm sorry if the sound of that hail is coming through the microphone. It's really heavy. Crazy. Yeah, still crossing my fingers I don't lose power. It is quite atmospheric for playing this, though. So, at this point where I am right now, I could press O and continue to sort of auto-explore the dungeon. However, I can see up here, this looks like a bigger room. And I really don't want to just walk out there, and for there to be a ton of enemies out there and be sort of caught off guard. So sometimes it pays to manually do a bit of exploring. So just like right now. By the way, you don't have to right-click every time you see an enemy to see what weapon it's carrying. It'll actually say down here. So this hobgoblin comes into view as wielding a +0 club. Cool. And then you can go ahead and start fighting it if you feel confident enough to do so. We very much do at this point. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And then we will go ahead and press O now because we know that that room wasn't as big as we initially thought. Okay. That's interesting. Okay, so there's a couple things here I can talk about. Here's a shaft. We spotted it rather than accidentally walking into it, which is very good. If we had accidentally walked into that, it sort of makes some character rules. I don't know if it's based on intelligence or if it's just completely random. Oh, I know you can hear that hail now. Oh, that's crazy. Yeah. You know what? It's pretty loud. So I'm gonna go ahead and pause the recording here temporarily until this hail passes by. we will continue. Oh, I am back. Woo! That was one hell of a storm. Thankfully, I didn't lose power, and it didn't really damage the house in any way, at least as far as I can tell right now. So we're gold right now. But I don't know if it'll come back or not, so I have to stay on my toes. But it was really fun to watch, though. Like, almost marble-sized hail in Washington, in the rainy state. It's crazy. So that's climate change for you, though. Never seen it. I've lived here my whole, well, except for like 4 years. My 29-year life has been spent in this state, and it's absolutely crazy to see this kind of stuff happening more regularly. Thunderstorms and hailstorms and hotter summers. It's pretty crazy. Man, we need to stop killing our planet. Because that was Mother Nature screaming right there. Anyways, all right, let's get back to it. So we've just come across a unique enemy, Terrence. Terrence can be pretty nasty. Looks dangerous. Yeah, no kidding. A violent murderer who kills for both pleasure and profit. Yeah, Terrence is pretty crazy. So AC 2, Evasion 2, Magic Rating 1, or Magic Resistance 1, and about 20 hit points. He's very comparable to us. Up to 5 damage plus his -1 cursed hand axe. So he can hit for quite a lot of damage. If I'm not mistaken, a hand axe, it should be about 6 damage, I think. But I'm curious. 7. Oh, okay. Well, he can hit for up to 12 damage then, which means that he can theoretically 2-hit us. We would prefer not to fight Terrence right now. Now, the downside is he spotted us, so he's going to come after us. We might be able to lose him, however. So if we start to move away like this, what we can do is we can move diagonally just as quickly as we possibly can. And as you can see there, oh, no, we haven't lost him yet. Okay, so this is what we're going to do then. We're going to go back up the stairs here. Bam. Now, if you're wondering, monsters cannot come upstairs unless they are directly adjacent to you when you move up the stairs, at which point you will essentially pull them up the stairs. This is actually a strategy that can be used to separate monsters from a larger pack and take them on sort of your terms. It can be dangerous, though, because they'll get a free hit on you as they follow you up the stairs. Or actually, potentially several, because it takes more than one arbitrary time unit to move up the stairs. As you can see, it took me 2.5 there. So it sort of depends on the situation, but right there, we could not afford to let Terrence hit us. He is a dangerous target. We're going to want to leave him and come back for him later if we can. Now, like I was saying with this game, it's all about managing resources, and experience points are a resource. So Terrence is a resource. We will want to kill him for the delicious experience points eventually. But right now is not the time. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to find out. That one goes to there. So this one, oops, sorry. This one here, if we move over to here, and if we enter map, but we actually didn't have to move over here, but I'm gonna, yeah. So that one goes over there. So this one should be fairly safe. Terrence isn't gonna be here, and that's really what we cared about. Now, because Terrence was activated, he was awake. He is gonna move around from here. So he's wandering around the level. So we could still run into him. So we're gonna wanna be really careful when we explore. We're gonna wanna have an escape route. Fortunately, Terrence is not fast and doesn't have any ranged attacks or spells, so as long as he doesn't catch us while we're fighting other stuff, we should be okay. But we are definitely not going to be using Auto Explore at this point, because that's just very, very dangerous with a unique enemy wandering around like Terrence. So we're going to use utmost caution here, especially around corners. This is something we want to be really, really careful about. Don't press the buttons too quickly. And that's why this is so useful, because it'll stop if you see anything dangerous or interesting. And remember, you do that by holding down Shift and then pressing a directional arrow key. It's very handy for exploring corridors like this. All right. Now, you might have noticed I did pick up something there. It's a ring. We definitely don't want to put that on blindly. We are going to be IDing some scrolls here kind of shortly. As a matter of fact, we probably should do that now. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go and click here. We're going to go up these stairs, and we're on this floor, which we're like 99% sure is safe. And we're going to go ahead and start blind reading some scrolls. Now, why did I go up to this floor to do it? Because some scrolls are scrolls of teleportation, which can teleport you to a random place on the floor. We really don't want to have that active while we're on the floor with a unique enemy, because it could teleport us right next to it. And also there are scrolls of noise, which can attract things, so it's just better off to do it here. Now, we have 4 different kinds of scrolls, and one of them is in a stack of 3. I almost guarantee you that this is a scroll of Identify or a scroll of Remove Curse. It is a scroll of Identify. It's going to allow us to identify any of these unidentified items in our inventory. I highly recommend against using a scroll of Identify on another scroll. I really just don't recommend it. Use it on potions or items you're curious about putting on. We're going to use it on the ring. Ooh, it's an uncursed ring of poison resistance. So we're going to go ahead and slap that on. So we're wearing it on our left hand now. If we look at our character, you can see we are now resistant to poison. Poison is something that certain enemies can inflict on you, and it'll fill up your health bar with yellow health, and yellow health is health that's going to drain slowly. If your whole bar becomes yellow, that means you're lethally poisoned and will die unless you do something to remove the poison. Potions of curing, for example, will remove poison. So poison can be very dangerous. Now, we have a ring of resist poison, which means we're very resistant to words. Very resistant to it. It doesn't mean that we cannot become poisoned, last time I checked. It has changed. There used to be, I believe, multiple levels of poison resistance, but it's a little different now. Just while I'm thinking of it, we're going to go ahead and set a target level for charms. We're going to go ahead and set it for a 6. And we're also just going to kind of equal out both of these. Now, if we look at our costs here, yeah, that means polearms is going to be leveling up a lot faster than charms. We'll keep it on a minor focus then. Okay, so we still have 2 more scrolls of Identify. We're going to go ahead and use them to ID some potions. Potion of Flight and a Potion of Magic. Okay, potentially useful. I'm really interested in identifying what our potions of healing are, because those are, as you can probably imagine, very useful. So, now we're gonna go ahead and wait on our scrolls until we have more to read any more. So we will just continue exploring this floor. We may want to move on to the next floor, because we still have Terrence wandering around on this floor. Oh, there's a kobold. That's fine. I'm gonna go ahead and stab him. There we go. And yeah, we just don't want to take on Terrence yet. So I'm thinking that we'll probably go down a floor and kill some stuff there, and then come back for Terrence in a little bit. Now, why would I do that? Well, because Terrence is a little strong for us right now, and Terrence isn't going to go anywhere. He can't move from floors, and nothing else can kill Terrence. All enemies are allied, so to speak. So really, at this point, we're better off leaving him and coming back once he's an easier kill. He's a big bundle of experience points. And it'll just be nicer to get him later. Now, the challenge rating of enemies isn't going to change too much between two floors, so we don't have to worry too much about we don't have to worry too much about dealing with him. So if that goblin had moved over to this space, I would have definitely wanted to start moving back, but because it was just a goblin and a hobgoblin, I wasn't too terribly concerned. We got another scroll of identify. We're going to go ahead and use that on another potion. Potion of mutation. So potions of mutation are interesting. They're not good and they're not bad. They're a random roll. They're going to give you some random mutations, usually between, I think, like 1 and 3. There's a list of potential mutations on the wiki. And I believe it actually, I'm not positive. I think it is weighted in a way that it's like, there's like 2 out of 3 chance that these mutations are going to be positive, and a 1 out of 3 for each mutation is going to be negative. But generally speaking, a potion of mutation is not worth quaffing unless you're really early on in the game. Like, for example, if I was playing on my own, at this point, I might just go, heck with it, and roll the die on it. But we're not gonna. We're gonna hang on to it. We're not gonna use it unless we're in like a situation where we think we're gonna die. And even then, probably not. They are definitely a die roll, and it's what I was talking about with this game, where if you die, it's almost always your fault. Oh, we just leveled up to level 3. Now every 3 levels, well, it depends on the race. So by default, we're playing a merfolk, which means we're going to get a +1 to a random stat every 5 levels, and every like 3 levels we're going to get to choose, every 2 or every 3, I can't remember, you're going to get to choose a stat increase: strength, intelligence, or dexterity. Now, they're all good choices for different reasons. Strength is going to let us wear heavier armor. We're not wearing armor, so it's not super important. Our melee attacks are going to deal more damage. Intelligence is going to give us more magic and make our spell casting stronger and better. Dexterity is going to make us a little more accurate with our attacks, as well as a little more dodgy and survivable. So intelligence and dex are definitely important for my character, more so than strength. So I'm definitely going to be putting it into one of those. I really get sort of an equal benefit out of either at this point. But because it's early on in the game and I want to be more survivable, we're going to want to hit more often, and we're going to want to be able to dodge more often. So I'm going to go ahead and put it into dexterity. So you can just press, I have to actually have the window selected, and then go ahead and go with dexterity just by pressing Shift D. My dexterity went from 13 to 14. That's going to have some minimal impact on stuff throughout the game. Don't worry too much about this, if I'm being perfectly honest, right now. Like, it is important, but it's not... All the stats technically have a use, so you don't have to be like, oh, did I pick the right one? I think I picked the wrong one, because even if I'd, like, for example, accidentally picked strength, just as an example, it still has its uses for my character. It still means that I'm going to be hitting physically harder with my character, which is still good for me. All right, so I moved back into this hallway for aforementioned reasons. I guess I could have cast a spell, but not super necessary for me at this point in time. Oh, there is a rat. I'm going to go ahead and kill you. Excellent. What's our spellcasting chances now? So as you can see, Training Charms is having a very noticeable effect on our spells. Infusion has gone from 10% to 8% failure rate. And that will continue to go down as I train that skill. So we're going to want to continue training that. And also leveling up gave us another spell level. So in another 2 experience levels, we'll be able to pick up another one of these, either regeneration or spectral weapon. We'll talk about that when we actually get there. We don't have to worry about it too much right now. So I'm gonna go ahead and surprise this kobold here. Ooh, nice. There's a scroll here, and there's a door here. I don't know what's behind this door, so we're gonna go ahead and wait to pop that. Oh, hold on. Oh no, okay, that's fine. Yeah, be wary of doors where you don't know who or what is on the other side, because as you can imagine, there can be some pretty nasty stuff. Okay, this gives us a chance to talk about something bad that can happen. We just fell through a shaft. We just went from dungeon level 2 to dungeon level 4. This can be pretty deadly in some situations, and this is one reason why you're going to want to have some stuff, some resources identified and ready to use just in case a really bad thing like this happens to you. Now, this seems like RNG, right? This seems like, oh man, well, this could just happen and kill you. Well, technically, yes. But if I fell into the middle of a bunch of strong monsters right now and just got torn apart, it would still be my fault. I could have become more prepared, and I did a little bit. I read some potions, I read some scrolls and got some potions prepared. I put on this ring. I've taken precautions with the resources I have on hand, and I can still blind read these scrolls and hope for a scroll of teleportation or fear or blinking or something if I get into a really bad situation. So yeah, technically we're now on a dungeon level, you know, that's far deeper and a little more dangerous. We don't have any escape routes, and that is why we're going to have to play incredibly intelligently, slowly, methodically, and to get our way out of here. So, folks, this has been episode 1 of this series. We have just started. I'm having a ton of fun actually talking about this and playing it for this series. And I'm going to continue to do so until we die. And then probably start another character and do some more, because this is a great time. And I always have fun like introducing people to these games, particularly a game like Dungeon Crawl that I really, really, really want to introduce to as many people as possible. I really hope you've enjoyed this. I will be putting up another episode here very shortly. I'm trying to keep the channel on a minimum of 1 episode every other day. That's eventually going to become 1 episode every day once I have a bit more of a backlog and I feel a little more confident with my tools and my setup making that happen. But yeah, I'm going to continue making this sort of long form content, tutorial-y let's plays, and yeah, I'm going to continue to enjoy it. Now granted, as I play games more, like the same game more, it's going to become less tutorial-y and more just a let's play. So don't worry, stuff like this is going to move a lot quicker in the future. But I really hope you've enjoyed. Tune in next time where we see what's going to happen to Oak the Poker. I just realized it says that because we're using polearms. Oak the Poker. I love it. Okay, well, until next time, folks, you know, have a great day, and yeah, I'll see you on the other side. See ya.